So Rambo is safe for the moment. He's successfully outrun the sheriff temporarily, but moves on through the woods knowing he has very little time. And he comes across an abandoned junkyard, looks through a trailer for some kind of shelter, and finds what looks like a power line cord. He searches through wrecked trucks and comes across some old canvas and makes a DIY type windbreaker tunic. Then carries off on deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, Mitch shows up to rendezvous with Teasel, who informs him to call Orville in with the dogs, specifically the Dobermans. He also tells them, to then get Galt out there with the chopper, using a bit of abuse of authority tactic here. Then Will reassures himself, talking to himself after they've gone, saying, "Yeah, we'll get him, no problem." So things are about to get serious. Rambo moves on upward the mountain scale, and the police eventually show up, and the chase is back on. And it's clear that David Caruso's Mitch is the rookie, and the deputies berate him periodically. Though his part is somewhat small, it is an important one. They berate him like, "Oh, Mitch up the hill, whatever." So they really talk down to him and give him a hard time. So Rambo checks his bearings using the compass within his knife, and we start to see the necessity of this weapon, or the importance of it, of his weapon of choice, the survival knife. I remember as a kid being blown away by the capabilities of this brilliant prop, as I think many were, and many will be in the future. So I love the line that follows in a bit by Orville, jokingly serious, saying like, "Don't worry, my dogs can eat and run at the same time." And it kind of foreshadows things, and we kind of see that this is what we're dealing with. Hunting, and everything's getting out of control. And Rambo's getting winded, running, and even slips up a bit, then purges for a brief moment, then forthward up the mountain. And he can hear the dogs approaching, and Mitch warns deputies about John Jay's capabilities. And we learn, or we can see the worry start to set in, Rambo's eventually cornered. He tries to double back, but the incoming posse is way too close. So he opts to climb down the cliff face, because he's cornered in a section where it's just cliff, straight down, drop to the death kind of thing. So he doubles back, then figures out he can't do it, so he has to buy himself some time. So I guess it's downward now. So in an escape attempt, it's a nerve-wracking scene, as Rambo goes from ascent to descent, periodically almost falling off the cliff. And the camera's take on vertigo here is amazing. The soundtrack as well, the music here it just gives you a sense of vertigo. I love the score and the powerful grunt Sly gives forcefully, contorting his body in fury when he realizes that he must have to climb down to escape. It's quite classic indeed. And Arthur Galt arrives a la helicopter and tries to snipe Rambo off the cliff face. And he undoes his seatbelt and hangs out the chopper, free firing at Rambo radically, as the chopper dips from the interfering winds. So the chopper pilot does not agree with Galt, and Art pretty much threatens to kill the pilot if he does not obey his wishes. So Galt lines up Rambo in his sights, for the kill, but John Jay decides to leap out off the cliff face, doing some last minute aiming, for the fir trees below. And it's a long and terrifying fall, composed by B. Hooker, I believe. So, and like the last parts of it were actually Sly falling through the tree. So Rambo crashes down through the trees, cracking his ribs and impaling his arm, hooking himself on a branch. And it's really painful to watch. It's excruciating. And Rambo snaps the branch and falls and lands on the ground in agony. He ducks behind a tree, evading Galt's sniper fire, who seems more like he's just having fun now. And, but he should have went by the book, because Rambo grabs a rock and motherfucker, he throws it and cracks the chopper windshield in his very own primitive but effective return of fire, which results in Galt falling out from the chopper because the pilot, ducks down thinking it's gunfire, and, screaming down horrifyingly, just to land on the jagged rocks below. And must I say, it's a landing we almost see, but definitely can feel. So the chopper takes off, the pilot's in fear, and, Rambo quickly works his way over down to Galt's body. And this is a scene that was cemented into my brain somewhat the first time I saw it. It's haunting. He pulls Galt up face to face from the rock and is shell-shocked by the grisly remains of Galt's steaming body. He quickly body hugs, strips him of ammo, weapons, and his torn up jacket, slabs Art's head down. You can hear it thud on the rocks, then staggers his way off to find a quick hiding spot to address his own wounds. And I must say that scene gave me nightmares. It's pretty bloody, but not as bloody as the next scene. So, from the high point, Teasel and company arrive to look down at Galt's body. And for Teasel, it's all or nothing now. We cut to Rambo held up on the rocks, prying out his survival knife. And like building the tarp suit and using the compass, we are treated to a new feature. He empties out the hollowed out handle of all its contents and sets up his needle and thread and begins to stitch together his arm. Sans anesthetic. This drop effect fused with, prop effect fused with his great acting ability assure that this is one of the greatest FX scenes in motion picture history. Sly here sells it completely on every level. It's excruciatingly painful to watch, and it still holds up after all these years. Watching this as a kid, I couldn't believe it, or how cool it was, and, it still is an awesome freakout scene. And Sly's acting here is really, 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 really great. And the prop design, for that effect is amazing. And I'll just do a little plug. check out our episode on that a couple of episodes back called The Sewing Scene, and we had another one where we talked about Indie Mogul. It was actually the same one where Indie Mogul did the same technique, so go check that out because it's really, really, really cool. So, meanwhile, back at the ranch, no, not the ranch, but the top of, actually not even the top of the cliff face, the posse is actually below now, and is trying to stitch together the situation themselves, right? The current situation. So, actually, hold that. I'm getting ahead of myself. They're still above. They're still on top of the cliff face. They haven't come down yet. So after Rambo sews up his arm, he shows up, arms raised, ready to surrender, saying that it's not his fault what happened, and that he doesn't want anyone else hurt. So the police reply the way these days we all know them to do. In response, they shoot first and leave the questions to God. So Rambo fakes out being shot in the face and fumbles backwards out of sight and the line of fire. So the posse form their plans, arriving at Galt's body finally, and Will calls Lester for the chopper, but the chopper refuses to return to the scene. So then Lester gives Teasel the info on Rambo, and this is where we find out that Rambo's the fastest gun in the West, that he's a returned from Vietnam vet, Green Beret, Congressional Medal of Honor winner, a war hero, and Teasel is almost weary or cautious to think, but Mitch chirps up and pushes Teasel back into hunting mode, back into on offense, as I should say. So some of the others apparently or assumingly make Teasel feel somewhat obsolete in his efforts to take on Rambo, and Teasel scolds Mitch for it, grabbing him by the hair pretty harsh, and almost pushing Caruso's face into the bloody steaming pulp of Galt's remains, vowing to pin Rambo's Congressional Medal of Honor on his liver with or without him. So Teasel's pissed at the loss of his friend, and it's, they've been friends a long time, since Mitch was wiping his nose, or his mama was wiping his nose. And the acting here is solid. I would not want Dennehy on my ass, because he's fucking terrifying. So they regroup themselves and set out into the approaching fall of night to capture their escaped convict on a rather, how should I say, a rather serious vendetta of first blood. And now it's just going to escalate.